John. Thanks for this beautiful exhibition. I'm Sarah Traver. I'm the director here. And this month we're featuring John's work in our gallery. The show is titled Horizons, and it features a brand new body of work, which we'll take a look at.
Great, let's go on in.
John, you want to, I think for a lot of folks seeing this for the first time, one of the most striking things is the installation here. You want to talk just briefly about how and why these pieces are suspended?
Sure. So I think let me back up a little bit before we talk about the suspension of the pieces and just say that I started working on this body of work about 5 years ago before the pandemic, and had made a couple of things and kept them in the studio and brought them out and worked on a bunch of different iterations. And then when I saw the new space here, I thought, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity to do something and show something totally new and think about a new way of maybe activating the space as well. So typically if I have a solo exhibition, particularly at Traver Gallery, I like to think about a different way to show the work. And for this, I definitely didn't want anything that was pedestal based. This is such a nice, bright, light space that I felt like the mass of a pedestal wouldn't really suit the work. And after experimenting with perhaps wall mounting and looking at some alternative stands that were hollow, this idea of suspending the work on floating platforms came to me and seemed to be like a solution that might work. So I did some experiments at the studio and felt like it really worked well with kind of this architectural nature of this new work.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I love just the feeling of airiness around these pieces, which themselves are, of course, kind of weighty. They're glass blocks, but they also have this, like the translucency of the material, everything. They work so beautifully together. The suspension, the slight bit of movement that is caused anytime the air conditioning kicks on or wind blows a little bit. It's really, it's startling and gorgeous.
Well, there is this contrast between the mass. You know, these pieces are quite heavy. I think the heaviest one is just under 80 pounds, and kind of having this weightlessness.
Yeah.
So I just like the idea of it kind of floating and being able to walk around unimpeded. And also the little bit of movement too, I think lends itself to the work. So yeah,
the work itself, this is all new work for you. We've never shown this work before, but it is based on the work that you were doing prior. You want to talk a little bit about that relationship and how you came to these new sculptures?
Yeah, so this initially was born out of a body of work called fractographs that I was working on for a number of years. And the fractographs are broken and reconstructed optic glass blocks. I've used several methods to deconstruct it, as I say, not break, and then put them back together. So the process of reconstructing a fractured, sometimes extremely fractured block of glass is pretty tedious. And so I spent hours studying the way the glass fractures and looking at the fracture patterns and the lines. And also the way that when you're studying a piece of glass, it divides your view of the space kind of optically and through color and with the way the light kind of interacts with your eye as well. So really what these are in essence is an abstract fracture pattern that I draw on a block of glass, and then they're cut apart and finished. One is polished. I only did one that was polished, and then the rest have this kind of satin finish to them. All of these pieces actually go back together in a rectangle. There's some negative space in there, but they actually can be put back together in a rectangle. And the other thing about this work is it's designed to be movable. I choose a way to photograph it and I choose a way to install it, but it can be arranged in a number of different ways.
Amazing. So these are not fixed. They actually are individual blocks that are arranged.
They are. And the feel of the piece changes pretty dramatically depending on how it's arranged. I tend to be drawn towards more formal installations. So I arranged all of these kind of linear. And also I felt like for the introduction of this body of work that I wanted to reference the rectangle in the original form. It's not hard to see when you look at this that, you actually can visually make up a rectangle by looking at the pieces and seeing how they put together. Whereas if it wasn't arranged in this way, I think that might be more difficult for the viewer to ascertain from just looking at the work.
One of the things that I love so much about your work is the way it changes our experience of the space that we're in. So, obviously there is just the nature of the piece itself, the color, and that changes the way we see things. But how do you think about architecture and space when you are making your sculptures?
I talk sometimes about my origin story as an artist, where it was growing up in a remodel. And I had this bedroom that literally had no walls on it. It was just framed in with stick frame construction. So perfect rectangles on 16-inch centers. And that sort of framed my view of the world for a couple of years when I was a kid. So I do kind of think about architectural spaces a lot and how introducing shapes, and in the case with working with glass, color and light alters one's perception of the architecture around it. These pieces look different as you move around them, and as the architecture changes too, I think your experience of the piece changes as well. So using flat glass in this case, where you can see directly through it like a window at some point, but then if you move slightly, it changes completely, is one of the ways to kind of change one's perception of the space as well.
I think where I see that almost most profoundly in your work is with the Tower series.
Sure.
You want to take a look at these ones?
Let's take a look, yeah.
And this is a body of work that you've been exploring for a number of years. These are brand new pieces.
Yeah, the towers. So, the blocks that I use for the fractographs and for the horizon pieces, the initial idea for that material was to do these architectural constructions. I use the word architectural a lot because I think of the work as being architectural in a lot of ways. And so the fractographs actually were a reaction to the perfection of the material and wanting to capture motion and emotion in glass or in 3 dimensions. And the towers really, I think more than any of the other pieces, are about interacting with the space and the architecture and dividing the space. The black piece here is a really good example of that, where from one side, it's totally reflective.
Yeah.
And from the other side, it's very transparent. So, how that works with glass and the color and the way it's ground and polished. I spent a lot of time in the studio experimenting with kind of minute details of how that changes. And also, I think the constructions of these two are architectural. But I think probably the piece that illustrates the division of space and kind of altering perception the most is the clear piece around the corner here.
Yeah, this is an incredible installation that you've created. These 8 elements. And the way that they use color is honestly kind of magical. Like the number of different compositions I've seen within this piece, like arrangements of color, it's so formal and simple and yet so like infinite in its iterations.
And this is the first time in many, many years that I've worked with painting on glass. The first work I ever did in glass actually was reverse painted. So I had some understanding of kind of how paint and glass interact. But this is really almost trickery in some ways, because as you move through, you see these different flashes of color. So I think, you know, again, working with the optic properties of the glass, there's only 2 surfaces on each one of these blocks that's painted, and only part of that surface. So as you move through, the color shifts and the composition shifts. It's
something I always loved about the Fractograph series was the way that you, by breaking the glass or deconstructing the glass, you take this optic block of glass from being what is essentially a window to having all of this inner life. Like you see inside the physical space of the glass with those, and this, without deconstructing these pieces, does the same thing in a really interesting way. The way it like draws my eye immediately to the edges or to a reflective plane, or honestly into the inside. Like I'm looking here, and of course the camera is not going to catch this, but from where I'm standing right now, I can see green, pink, yellow, just in this one plane of this block. It's pretty remarkable. And the colors that you've chosen are really beautiful complementary colors too, that I think, you know, kind of have this sort of Joseph Albers color theory effect.
Yeah, definitely. His book is on my mantle at home, you know, the big book. And, you know, the color palette, I chose standard sign paint colors, you know, the classic little one-shot sign paints. And I did that and didn't customize them at all, because I also wanted there to be some kind of familiarity to the color palette. Like as you go around, you see signs painted everywhere, and here's some of the colors.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a tinge of like, I don't know, a comfort. Like people say, you know, there's certain color combinations that speak to them, and you know, I think
they're pleasing. I mean, there's a reason that we choose those colors for sign paints, probably, is that they are visually stimulating, pleasing, grounding colors.
Yeah. And the stands in this case are, you know, obviously integral to the sculpture. They're powder coated steel, but in a space that doesn't have the concrete floor, they're designed to be floating as well. So you can see down here, like this comes off.
Oh, so the base plate, the flat piece under it can come off, and then the stand itself just mounts to the floor.
Sure. So someday I'd love to see them without the base plates on them, just mounted to the floor, because, you know, there's this idea of them almost growing up out of the structure. I like, and it fits into the whole thing that I love to do with a little bit of precariousness and, you know, a little, like these have a little spring to them, so they all move a little bit too. So
they're beautiful
just
pieces.
That feeling. Thanks.
Congratulations on an exceptional show. Thank you very much.
And thanks so much for
sharing it with us.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, and for you know, allowing me to have this exhibition. It's a beautiful new space. For those of you that haven't seen the new gallery space, you need to come down and check it out. It's spectacular.
Yep, absolutely. This show will be up through the month of August, and we hope to see you in person. And if not, definitely check out all of John's pieces online, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.